Hello, it's Carrie here, and welcome back to another episode of the She Means Business Show. I'm really excited that you actually are here because this episode is amazing, if I do say so myself. So I had a really powerful conversation with the amazing Heather Chauvin. She is the creator of the Mum is in Control podcast, which is a brilliant podcast. And recently she was a featured expert inside of our members club, and she came and she taught all about energetic time management and how to realign, reconnect, recharge, which I think is so important for us to do. And when we were doing the intro interview, we got chatting, and I just thought, you know what? We need to have a conversation, and I need to record it for the podcast because I think it's going to really inspire and empower everyone. Heather's story is so interesting, and I'm not going to ruin it for you, but she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when she was 27, 28, and it really was a turning point in her life. And prior to that, she had been doing personal development work, but while she'd been consuming things, she realised that she actually hadn't been doing the work. And I know for so many of us, especially for those of you in this community, we love personal development, we love learning and evolving. But I think so often we buy the courses, we buy the books, we maybe listen to the podcasts, but how often do we actually go and do the work and implement and become what we are hearing and what's resonating with us? So often we don't make that connection and then wonder why we keep listening to stuff, but like our life isn't changing. So this is a really powerful conversation because it's going to share with you her story as how she made that connection, how she actually made that change. And one of the things we also talk about is abundance, but abundance in relation to business and abundance in relation to money, and how we can allow more abundance into our lives, and how we can get into a place where we can get into the flow, where we can create what it is we want to create, essentially. And for me, yes, business is about practical strategies and taking practical action, don't get me wrong. There is a lot of that. But I honestly believe what is more important is the work that we do on ourselves, the inner work. Because if we are so stuck in our head all the time, if we are so caught up with the doubts and the worries and the fears and the frustrations, it feels like we are pushing and pushing and pushing and we're going nowhere. I don't know if you've felt like that, but I know I felt like that so many times, and it's such an irritating place to be. So I really think this conversation is going to really help you to see, just from listening to someone else's story and her sharing her experiences, how we can make that transition from being in that place to letting go of the resistance and moving into a space of abundance. I absolutely love this conversation, so I really, really, really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Hello, I am so excited to welcome Heather to this podcast. Heather, I'm so excited that you're here.
Hello, Carrie. I love these combos. Thank you.
I know, me too. So for everyone listening, I was on Heather's podcast while we recorded the interview last week, and it was so fun, and we were chatting away about all sorts and mindset and visualization and all that kind of good stuff, which I absolutely love talking about. So I'm really excited for this conversation. So Heather was recently, well, actually, as we're doing this interview, she's a featured expert inside of the members club. And when we did the intro interview together, like, we got chatting, and Heather's story is just so fascinating. I'm excited to kind of dive into your story and talk about that. And then one of the things that Heather really teaches is all about like how to actually claim an abundant life. And she talks about this in all different areas, but she also talks about it in context of business and money, which I think is something that all of us are going to be really interested in listening to. So I'm excited for us to dive into that as well. But for everyone listening, let's do a little quick overview of like who you are and what your business is about.
Yeah. Okay. I know every time you're asked this question, you're like, it's interesting because there's always the nutshell version, but yet you're like, oh man, that's a loaded question, right? Like, who are you? What do you do? So I'm Heather Chauvin. I'm the founder of a podcast called Mom is in Control. And I primarily support women who want to create what I call alignment. I don't believe, people like balance and all of that, but alignment to me, people come to me, they literally come to the podcast because they're a mother and they want to feel in control. So some aspects in their life feel out of alignment, out of control. And part of this, of course, we teach what we need to learn. I have 3 boys. They're 15, 10. Their ages always change, and then it screws up your pitch when you're talking. They're 15, 10, and 7. And motherhood was my awakening. One of the first ones. Motherhood was my holy crap moment, right? When you're like, oh, dang. And I remember looking at my son thinking, Heather, you need to do the work and you need to become the person that you most desire him to be. And so he was mirroring back to me everything. And as I continued on the journey, a big part of what I talk about now is, how do you want to feel in your life? Because 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with the stage 4 cancer. And that was at the time when I was actively building my business. And I was building it before then, but I was really in it. And my youngest was a year old. And it was a huge awakening because I was buying the personal development books. I was investing in the coaching. And there was one thing that I wasn't doing, which was embodiment and actually integrating all of that to become that woman that I really wanted to be. So that was a big, big eye opener for me.
So I would love to go deeper into this and talk more about it, because I feel like there's a lot of people who do the personal development and then feel like it is not working. Like, why is this not working? And there is a huge disconnect. And I think that's really interesting that you experienced that yourself. And had that realization. So I can't decide where to start. I don't know whether we should kind of go back to your first eye-opening experience of being a mum and realizing that you needed to be a reflection for who you wanted your son to be. How did you even realize that?
Well, I was actually 18 when I became a mother. So I was a teen mother already. And I just remember feeling like, I feel like I failed as a mother before I even became a mother, because I'm like, dang it, I did this wrong. And I was single. And I just remember not feeling the sense of purpose, not feeling the sense of, fulfillment or aliveness. Literally 3 weeks before I ended high school, found out I was pregnant. I had my future booked, oh, you're going to go travel, you're going to go do this. And then everything just came to a halt. And so I just remember telling myself, you will not become a statistic. That was my thing. I'm like a rebel. And, when someone's like, you can't do something, I'm like, I'll show you. Right. And that only gets you so far. And then you have to develop new coping strategies. But that was my first thing. And then so I went to university. I didn't think I'd go to university. I just did everything to prove everyone else wrong, not myself, everyone else around me, for him. He was my quote unquote purpose. And then when he was around 4 or 5 years old, I was in social work. I was in mental health, fell in love with this. And that's when I found mindfulness and meditation. And actually the first online product, I don't know if I told you this previously, the first online product I created was called Teach Your Kid to Meditate.
No way.
Because I wanted to teach him how to meditate. I didn't need it. I always laugh when I say I didn't need it. It was him, but he was reflecting back to me the work that I needed to do. I needed to learn how to manage my own anxiety. I needed to learn how to manage my own fear. So it kind of, parenting became this co-creation where I could, oh, you need to learn that. I'll learn that too. And we're learning and growing together. And then, going through the stages and every child teaching me something else. Very early on, I used to work in a government agency, and I just remember walking in, and this, I think everyone listening will have this moment too, because most of them are business owners, having this moment of, I cannot be here for 30 years. My soul is screaming at me. And I know you have a similar story of not this, not this. And I felt like a failure because I was feeling that way. But I started teaching meditation and mindfulness literally in my living room. I would be at home. I was pregnant with my second child, and I'd get a knock on the door, and I'd open the door, and it was my son's friend's mom. And I'm like, what are you doing here? She goes, oh, I grabbed, I'm not going to say her son's name. I grabbed so-and-so from school. It's his lunch break. Can you just like meditate with him? And she had this look on her face, like, help me, help me, help me. And I'm not kidding. People would do that. And so I'd start having these little circles in my house. And then I would go, I wouldn't rent, a place at first, like, because I was so terrified. So I'd go to nonprofits that were like, just donate $10. And I had strangers coming in and they're like, teach my kid. And then I would start getting questions from parents like, did you fix them? Did you fix them? Is the problem solved? I was listening to this, and as I started my online business, I started just doing webinars and connecting with other influencers, and I would start coaching people. And we were focused on mindfulness, like really helping not even the relationship, but more of like the child's mental health. And I would hear things from parents saying, I don't have the time for this. I don't have the time for this. And I know inside your membership, I was talking a lot about energetic time management. I don't have the time for this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, well, you're the leader, you're the teacher. And if you don't know how to implement this, how are we going to create change? So 6 years ago, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was like I was doing all of the work. And then I remember walking out of the hospital, having this aha moment. I looked up. I didn't know who I was talking to. I'm just like, okay, is it angels? Is it the universe? Is it God? What? And I looked up and I said, you finally have my attention. And in that moment, I surrendered and I completely stopped talking about what your child needs. And I was like, what do you need? Because you are the core of your universe. You are your life. And if we do not fix the foundation, like that's phase one. And then we can look at your child's mental health. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't know how to stand firm when your child is having a tantrum, if you don't feel rock solid, everything else around you is connected and it's going to fall apart, which affects your business, your money, your energy, your health, all aspects.
That is so interesting and such a powerful thing to say. And I think it's so, so true. So going back to then this realization for you. So I remember when I watched your TEDx talk, there was that picture of you where you look like you're pregnant and you say, I'm not pregnant in this picture. Like these are tumors growing. Were they growing in your stomach?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so to be diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, how old were you? 28 at the time?
I was like 27, 28. Yeah.
Oh my God, wow. So to face that reality, which presumably the outlook wasn't good at stage 4, No. So how did you begin to transform? Because like one of the things you just said before was that you were doing the personal development work. You'd already started kind of like with your online business and all that kind of stuff. So how did you put 2 and 2 together and realize what the missing piece was to help you to heal yourself?
Well, the interesting part was I felt like, and previous to that, I never ran a marathon before, but a marathon is like the race day, but there's so much prep that needs to happen before that day. So I felt like when I was diagnosed, I took that as a sign, like it's go time, it's integration time, like stop learning, now do, right? And you can't just, okay, I did my 5 minutes of meditation today. Check. I had to feel and I had to listen. The fact that from the time I was diagnosed to the time, and I did traditional treatment at first, which that in itself was a surrendering process for me because I was in the health and wellness space. And that's a whole other conversation. But I surrendered to that. And I was like, okay, there's actually a little diagram that was in the TEDx talk. So if you want to find it, it's called Dying to Be a Good Mother. Just look it up on YouTube. And I created this little diagram And I was like, okay, people live in survival mode and then they go to momentum. And there was like these little rings. Like I wasn't even on this in my life. I was in a crisis state. So how can I live in a crisis state and expect to be abundant? Right. So I'm there and I'm like, how is it that I was so disconnected from my body that these tumors are growing and I'm looking 6 months pregnant and nobody is saying anything to me? Like I looked in the mirror, took a picture, sent it to my sister-in-law, who's a physician who doesn't live locally. And she's like, get to the hospital ASAP. And I'm like, oh God, why? And then it took me 2 times to go to the hospital for me to actually stay there, because I was in there and my belief was I do not deserve to be here. I do not deserve a place in this waiting room. I am not worthy. I am not sick enough. And finally, my husband came with me and he's like, Heather, we're not leaving until you're seen. And Carrie, this is like the knowing. I was on the spot. They did a CT, did blood work and said, Heather, you have cancer. And I knew. I was like, it's like when someone tells you something and you're like, yeah, I already knew that. Like a knowing, I already knew I had cancer. And so after that, it was this unfolding of listening to this knowing inside of you. Like it's always there, but we are too busy and too addicted to busy and too like, oh, using your children as an excuse, using your business as an excuse to just slow down and listen. So when people say to me, how do I get my children to listen to me? Or like, it's so chaotic. People don't respect my boundaries, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, do you respect your own boundaries? Are you listening to yourself? And they're like, what does that have to do with getting my child to come and eat dinner? I said, if you don't do the inner work yourself, if you're not listening to yourself and saying, wow, I'm tired, I need a break, and you actually take that break, how are you going to expect anybody else to listen and respect you? You have to start and own that energy and embody it. And that's exactly what I started doing.
That is so powerful. Like, and I agree. I mean, I know this to myself. Like, there's so many times when I don't give myself permission to slow down and listen and to do the things that I know in my heart I need to be doing because I'm too busy with other stuff and with life. Like, it gets in the way. It's crazy, isn't it? So you had this realization and you started to show up for yourself. Was it just little things? Like obviously you surrendered and you literally had that moment where you looked up and you said, what was the statement you said? I
said, I'm finally listening.
I'm finally listening. So you said that, which I think is powerful in itself. Like, I have had moments where I'm like, literally the same, like energetically, I feel like I've surrendered and I'm like, I'm just ready to listen and to start paying attention. But then you started to do little things and but was it just for anyone listening that's like, but how? Because I know that so many people think that. And it's kind of like when you're starting a business and everyone's like, but how did you do it? How did you do it? And you just kind of need to get started and you take a little step and then you take another little step and the pathway begins to unfold and the breadcrumbs appear as you begin, to get going. But like, everyone wants to always just know, but how? But was it just a case of just literally like doing your meditation, but feeling it? And when you had a thought of like, I need a break, actually just taking a break and just doing that. And then the more you started to do it, the more you did it on like so many different levels.
Yeah. So there's 2 things. One is Danielle Laporte's desire map was a huge teacher for me at that time. So I read it before, and I think it came out around that time. I literally remember reading the book like previous to getting sick, or I had it. And then I actually did the work. And so what does that mean? I remember being bald, sick, and having no energy to attend to my children. First of all, the fear of somebody else can't take as good of care of my child as me. They can't eat macaroni and cheese because they're going to get sick and die. Like all of your fears as a parent, I Other people were watching my children. They were being fed Kraft dinner and hot dogs, whatever. Right. And I remember staring at my husband and, my family who came around and going, oh my God, like just keep them alive. And guess what? They survived and they were fine. So I remember laying there going, okay, the only person I need to take care of right now is me. And how do I want to feel? Well, I'm feeling like I'm going to die, and I'm feeling lack of energy, depressed, miserable, all the things that you don't want to feel. Great, Heather. How do you want to feel? I want to feel alive and connected, right? So the whole point, Danielle Laporte says, it's not the thing that you want, it's the feeling. So if you want the bigger house, why do you want the bigger house? Because you want more space. Okay. If that's your reason why, or you want to feel more abundant or whatever, you can have the bigger house, but it's the feeling. So if I want the feeling of more space or connection in my life, how can I do that right now? I remember being in the hospital and I wanted to feel alive and connected. When a person would come into my room, and I'm talking like a friend or a family member would come into my room, and I felt like they were treating me like I was dying, I immediately cut them off. And as soon as they left, I was like, they are no longer allowed to come into my space while I'm in recovery, like non-negotiable. So they would text me and be like, can I come visit? Nope. My fear of being judged by others went out the window, because I was like, I am going to live. I'm going to make this happen, because the energy was so important to me. Another thing people would say to me, like people would take my children away because they thought that was being of service to me. Like, oh, we'll entertain them. Uh-huh. I said, my children just want to be with me. So I would lie in bed when I was home and my kids would just lay with me. Sometimes we would talk. Sometimes we'd watch a video because there was nothing else I could do. That felt like connection. It wasn't perfect. I did a lot of journaling. I sat with myself. I listened to Abraham Hicks, the physical well-being one. And she or he, Abraham, Esther would say, your body knows how to heal itself. And I remember when I was diagnosed, I put it in my headphones. It was 15 minutes. I repeated it like for 24 hours, like anytime I was awake, and I would hear myself mentally go, the meditation would say your body can heal itself. And I go, no, it can't. Like mentally, I'm like, I'm dying. And then eventually I began to trust that my body knows what it's doing. And then, I would just little things like close my eyes and just sit with myself and be like, I got you. I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to start respecting you. And what did that look like? It looked like, I'm going to take a shower today. I don't want to, but I'm going to, because I respect you, body. And my body became like, I did a podcast on this. I was like, my body became like the fourth child I didn't know I had. Like I had to begin to mother myself. Mm-hmm. And that was when, now being on the other side of it, where I'm healthy and I'm thriving, like I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. Because now I just keep going, there's a new level, there's a new level, there's a new level. And so when women say to me, I feel guilty for taking care of myself, I feel guilty for putting myself first, I feel guilty, I go back to that moment and I think, even now in this climate, right? Like we're so obsessed with, oh, everyone else is suffering, I need to suffer. I'm like, no, when you are not suffering and you choose to feel good, you have so much more you can give. Every time I become stronger, I become more abundant, I become more alive, more energized, more connected. Man, when my child comes to me and they're having a hard day, I can be present and I could be like, I see you and I hear you. And I now believe that my life purpose is to feel good, and that the better I feel as a mother, that is the parenting strategy that we've been missing this whole time. But yeah, it was in that moment when I was like, dang, this was a missing ingredient that nobody taught me. And I was looking to women all over, like, show me, show me, show me. And I couldn't find anybody that was teaching it this way.
It's so powerful, and I just agree with what you're saying. And actually, what you did say, especially when you're talking about yourself and like showing up for yourself and respecting yourself, when you said that, it actually made me feel like really emotional, because I feel like how many of us don't actually have that connection with ourselves and don't even have that level of respect for ourselves, and it's actually pretty heartbreaking. And I completely agree with you about, I think our life's purpose is to feel good, and for a long time I was searching for my purpose, thinking it was this thing outside of myself, and when I realized it was nothing outside of myself, and my purpose was to live my best life, to feel good and to feel fulfilled and have meaning, that's what cracked me open to be able to get into a new level, and for things feeling like it was flowing to me, and I felt so aligned, and I felt like I was in the right place. But it was that shift into that mindset. And for me, I think this is so relevant for business owners, because I know I've gone through phases in building businesses where I felt like I'm pushing and pushing and pushing. It's hard work, it's a struggle. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it's always going to be a walk in the park, because it's not. But like, when I sit back and give myself permission to sit in a place of awareness, of a place where I am really conscious about feeling good and the way I feel and addressing the way I feel, and opening myself up to it being an experiment and an adventure, and for being fun even when it's challenging and pushing me outside my comfort zone, that's when I feel like I can get into the flow. And like with you, what you were saying, I listen to videos, like I go on YouTube daily and just like watch a quick like 10-minute Abraham Hicks video or something that will get me into that mindset where it reminds me of like, this is important. Like, I went through a phase for a couple of years of like really just being off track with it all, and it was really funny because along that way meditation came up over and over and over again. Every video I was watching, different books I was reading, different people, like it felt like this someone was knocking on my head being like, you need to meditate, you need to meditate, you need to meditate. And I just ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. And the moment I finally just like, I'm going to start meditating, like everything just began to change. And I just think but it changed not only in how I felt, but it's changed my business and helping me to like create more success. So people listening are people, you know, we are business owners, entrepreneurs, where people got ideas. We want to turn those ideas into a successful business. And I know one of the things you do teach is like how to actually claim your abundance. And so how can people do that in relation to specifically business and money? And I feel like we've already touched on this, but just in a different context. But I think this will be fascinating.
Yeah. And just something that you said, because I think the answer is right there in what you just said, which is, but if you're too busy in your mind and you're looking outside of yourself to like push, oh, this person is telling me to build a business this way, so I'm going to build it this way. But yet, you know, when you sit with yourself, you're like, this doesn't feel good. And there's a difference between it not feeling good because it's not in alignment, or it not feeling good because it's uncomfortable, right? But you're like, oh, I know. It's like, you know, working out. Sometimes the hardest part is just starting. And then once you start, like, I've never regretted a workout.
Yeah.
So it's, you know what you need to do. I truly believe everyone knows what they need to do. They just have to have the courage to do it and to go after it. And abundance. So like when I got into this stuff, so I would say like, I'm a very woo-woo person, but people will say like, you make it practical. Like you make it, you know, you're a mother, you're still raising these boys. You have moments like you're not perfect. And I remember feeling like, you know, the law of attraction, watching The Secret. And the one part that I was missing, or I think we all missed in that movie, was action. Where, you know, for me, it's like, okay, what do you want? Like, you need to get clear on what you want. Like, and what you want, you might only be able to see 30 days from now, or you see like your big vision, just depending on what thinker you are. And if your big vision, you know, for me, I've been wanting to write a book for 10 plus years, right? So if my big vision is to write a book, okay, but maybe right now is not the time to take that action, but I need to build a platform so that if I did write a book right now, someone would know about it. Journaling is just really, really important, but stepping into your abundance, stepping into this, like everything is available to you, is vulnerable. And it's also on the other side of fear. It's on the other side of resistance. So for me, a very practical way to do this is I take a pen and a paper and I go, what do you want? And I just write it down, like 5 minutes, what I want, what I want, what I want. I pay attention to what comes out. If I'm stuck and I don't know what I want, then I write down everything that I don't want, like everything that's not working in my life. And then I take one of those areas, I turn it around. So if I'm like, I don't want to work so much. Okay, great. How much do you want to work? 20 hours a week or whatever that is. Great. How can you scale whatever you're doing now to get there? Or if you're just starting your business, what is the one action that you need to do consistently? Because consistency is key, not sexy, but people need to figure that out. You can't just eat one healthy meal and be like, I'm a healthy person. You have to eat healthy all the time, or at least, 80% of the time, and crowd out your other stuff. What is the one action that you need to do consistently to keep going? And for me in my business, it was speaking my truth. So that's why I love podcasting. Actually, last year, I decided to podcast every single day because I could feel that I was resisting my message. And I also knew I was up leveling, just going to a new level. So I'm like, I'm going to podcast every day just so that I can't censor myself. Like I just have to hit submit. If I get the feedback and it's not nice, that's part of the journey. And it's like, what do you want? And then just jump off that cliff. Hopefully you have a parachute on, and know that fear of like jumping off the cliff of, am I going to land? That's where the magic happens. And I just think too often people sit back and they're playing it safe. I see it all the time. You probably see this all the time too. Like, you can't just absorb free content and not implement it. You have to be all in and implement it, get dirty, feel your resistance, and push through. And to me, building a business has been like birthing a baby. Contractions are going to be there. You have to push through the contraction. You also have to rest, and you have to realize and trust your body and trust the universe and trust life that it has your back. But if you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, crossing your fingers, hoping that somebody is going to knock on your door, abundance will not knock on your door. But it will drop the little breadcrumbs in front of you, like, hey, meditate. A book will fall off. So a little card will come. You're going to get these little, signs. But if you're not listening and you don't implement, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it is like listening, but then, like you said, implementing, taking action. Because you're right, the opportunities do arise. The people do come into your life to help. The right resources do show up. But how many people are so blind to it because they're not paying attention, because they're so stuck in their head about everything, and they're so caught up in their own fears and doubts and worries that they can't see these things presenting themselves. Like, I remember with me when I started FEA, the getting it off the ground was just opening myself up to say yes to things. And I just got into yes mode, which isn't necessarily a place you should be in your business all the time, but at the beginning for me it felt like a really good place to be, and it felt like the right place to be, to say yes to going along to events, yes to these opportunities. I had no bloody clue what they were about. I'd just say yes, I would do it, I would go, I would have conversations, I would just show up and show up and show up and show up, and that just helped build so much momentum. And an idea sparks, or someone introduces you to someone, and I don't know, life just begins to flow. It flows, like it becomes something. Energy is there, and it is powerful. So I love that. And in regards to money, just quickly, just before we wrap up, but it was regards to like money and abundance. Like, again, that's something that people often like want to know, but how do I attract like the financial abundance into my life? How do I bring that in because people want that. And something you said earlier, I think was so true. You have to experience it and feel it in order to bring that in. And I always think to myself with money, every single one of us has the ability to literally transcend our reality, to experience what it feels like to be a millionaire, because we can all pretend, like we can all connect emotionally to that if we allow ourselves to go there. And
I'm sure your vision of what becoming a millionaire was different when you actually became one.
True.
And it's the feeling that we're after. So just what you said, if you're like, okay, when I get here, then, okay, what do you think that's going to give you? Well, I'm just going to, sit around all day and like my life is going to feel so spacious and free. And then you get there and you're like, it's not spacious and free, right? Because we both know people who have lots of money who do not feel abundant, right? And then people who don't have a lot and feel amazingly abundant. And so you have to be willing to look at what you're resisting. So I'm like, how much money do you want to make? Right? Because a lot of times when people come and work with me, there's different phases. And the first phase might be, I got to get my personal stuff together. The second phase might be if they are business owners, because I do attract business and non-business owners. If they are business owners and money is that part, I'm like, when is the last time you've looked at your money? They're like, oh, I avoid opening my bank accounts. It's like, you have to look at it. It's like your body, right? If I want to feel good in my body, I have to actually feel my body and feel what's going on inside of it. So abundance is this complex word that people overcomplicate, but it's raise your vibration. Who do you need to become in order to attract that? It doesn't come to you. You have to show up. And if abundance doesn't mean you have to go just keep ringing the credit card. But if you're investing in yourself, which I'm a huge advocate of, that's step one.
Yeah.
You can't just join a coaching program or join a membership site and think, okay, I said, universe, bring me the abundance. And then go watch Netflix. Like, you have to do the work. You have to show up. You have to implement. And every day I ask myself, how do I want to feel today? And what actions, little actions, which can be practical and non-practical, do I need to do in order to become that energy? And if I'm doing that 50 to 80% of the time, I'm gaining some momentum and I'm moving forward. If we all have heavy days, 2020 has been a shit show and it's been a lot to handle emotionally. So my emotional work that I have to do on myself is become priority, right? I have to look at the discomfort. I have to feel it. I have to act on that. And abundance is in there and I might not feel it all the time. But yeah, there's so much in there. And I just want everyone to know, I was that person who didn't know what my life purpose was, or I didn't think I had one. And it took dying to realize that I was avoiding what was inside of me the whole time.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And I feel like you just said so many powerful things throughout this conversation. I wish we could talk for longer, but we'll have to get you back and we can keep chatting about all this stuff, because I think it definitely resonates with everyone on some level. So thank you for coming and talking. Where is the best place for people to get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah, so they can definitely hang out a lot on the podcast. So it's called Mom is in Control. It's on everywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Instagram at my name, Heather Chauvin. Last name spelled Chauvin, and my website. And then in February of 2021, that's when my book comes out.
Oh, that is so exciting. After 10 years. Wow.
Yeah, and terrifying and all that fun stuff. Another birthing.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this. It's been really empowering and really inspiring and powerful. for everyone listening, if you want to go to the show notes and get access to everything and all those links and the TEDx talk and all that stuff, then head over to femaleentrepreneurassociation.com/Heather to check it all out. But Heather, thank you for being amazing. I really appreciate you being here and having this conversation with me. And I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Carrie.